Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy.
Now let's head to the Jim's Firearms Hotline, talk to our guy Preston Guy from TigerBait.com, who could probably do some discount shopping at this point, being that he was at Disney last week, and I'm told that is not inexpensive. I have not been with a little one yet, but that's the word on the street. So, Preston, you're welcome if you needed to do some discount Christmas shopping in here at Red Stick Sports.
You know, Hunt, I've got plenty of items in my closet from that Red Stick scent sale, man. Let me tell you, good time to get you a good pair of shoes, man. Some basketball shoes, all that. I've bought plenty of cleats there as well during my high school years, and sometimes I buy them just for grass cutting shoes. So I'm a big fan of the tent sale.
We like to hear that. How much differently do you feel about LSU's football team today than you did 7 days ago before they went to College Station?
Yeah, I really felt this defense had turned the corner, and, you know, Blake Baker was doing a good job, you know, getting them out there ready to play. And for about 32 minutes of football, I felt very good about that. Then they plugged in Marshall Reed, and all of a sudden I have some serious questions about this defensive coaching staff and their ability to predict what kind of offense they're going to see. It's not like Marshall Reed hadn't played all year. You know, they probably should have been able to watch his film and seen that, you know, Connor Wegman was a guy who came into the game, 3 touchdowns, 4 picks. They probably should have had a feeling that he was on a tight rope and prepared for both quarterbacks, but they didn't. So I think that that's a major element of mine that changes. I also question this defense's ability to stop a runner, which we'll see in about 8 days' time. If they can adapt with preparation for a runner, because I think we all expect Jalen Milroe is going to, you know, he's going to use his legs, right? So I'd say mostly that's what changed. The offensive struggles, those are a lot of things that reared their ugly head up. We had seen a lot of signs of those struggles, right? And just in the second half, they all came at the same time. You know, we've seen times where they haven't been able to run the ball well. We've seen times where Nussmeier had gotten a little, you know, trigger happy throwing, you know, errant balls. And at the second half against Texas A&M, we saw all those issues at the same time. And while that's going on, your defense, so it was just a total implosion, a lot of existing issues that just came up at the same time. Hopefully they can avoid them and only have 1 or 2 at the same time moving forward.
What do you find the most avoidable? Not stopping the run, the interceptions, lack of a running game? Like, what do you feel best about them fixing?
I mean, the interceptions are the easiest to avoid. I mean, if Nussmeier doesn't throw those 3 picks in the second half, it is a ball game, even if you can't stop Marshall Reed and company. In terms of which one's most pertinent, boy, that's a tough pick. I mean, you got to be able to run the ball. If you can run the ball well, I really think this is an elite offense. But as we've seen most of the time this year, they have not been able to run the ball. And it's not going to get any easier in 8 days.
No, it's not. I mean, Alabama. Well, I shouldn't. Actually, I'll push back on that, Preston. I've looked at the run defenses. Like, Bama's given up some serious yards on the ground, and A&M really hasn't. It's possible that A&M's got a better defensive front than Alabama.
Look, it maybe, but it's not going to. Trust me, they're not going to just push over and let you run the ball. You know, I mean, this is a team that has struggled to run the ball against weaker opponents. I assure you. I mean, you look at their inability to run the ball against nickels. You know what I mean? So, yeah, okay, maybe Texas A&M's a little tougher against the run, but I promise you, Bama's got talent on that defense, and it is not going to be a simple task.
No doubt about that. Preston Guy is our guest, TigerBait.com, with us every Friday on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Again, offensively, you don't have C.J. Daniels for the second half of that game. Chris Hilton did come back. What do you make of this wide receiving core right now as it's constituted?
Yeah, C.J. Daniels is your guy who really makes the tough catches, and you really wanted to have him in the back half of that game. Chris Hilton, I think, provides an element of a deep threat, but you can clearly see the rust off of Chris Hilton, you know, and I was watching that game, and the way he mistimed that touchdown that should have been touchdown pass in the end zone, just mistimed his jump. I'm thinking, man, if he just was out there practicing and playing this whole season, I promise you he's not making that mess up. And sure enough, a few seconds later, Kirk Herbstreit with the same exact comment of, man, he is shaking off some rust there. So I think that you got to get Chris Hilton back in the scheme of things. But, ultimately, I think this receiving core is good, but there's no one who's truly great in this receiving core. You don't have a Malik Neighbors or a Brian Thomas on this receiving core, so you really need them all healthy, playing as best as they can.
As far as the defensive front goes, you mentioned you kind of thought they were turning a corner, and we hadn't really noticed the defensive line, specifically the interior, much. They just kind of been doing their job and letting the linebackers go to work. Did they get beat badly in that game against A&M, or was it just the linebackers having their worst game?
I think it was a little bit of just everybody. I mean, and typically it definitely was more so the linebackers once Marshall Reed came. Because mind you, in the first half, they played a pretty solid game. They did limit A&M to 7 points in the first half, right? It's just in that second half, nobody could play disciplined assignment football. The read option like that, it's tricky. It's tricky. You have to play disciplined assignment football, and they just clearly weren't up for the task. So I'm not going to give anybody a passing grade.
How good do you think A&M is?
How good do I think they are? The big question mark is that Marshall Reed just a splash in the pan, or in LSU wasn't ready for it, or is that what did he turn the corner? A lot of times young freshman quarterbacks like that, early season, they're not great when they get their action, but a light switch just turns on for them eventually, and they just get better and better and better. So that's the big question. I'm going to lean with that was more so a sign of LSU and their inability to stop that while just having an implosion. I think Texas A&M's a solid team. I don't think they're a playoff team. Now certainly think they're better with Marshall Reed. I thought they were pretty bad with Connor Wegman in the game, like objectively a bad football team, right? And I think that was the football team that showed up against Notre Dame earlier this year, and I thought the same thing. It was a bad football team, right? But, it's one of those things. You get a spark, a light of fire. All of a sudden, you're moving the ball better. And all of a sudden, you go from being a pretty bad football team to a pretty solid football team. So we'll see. Marshall Reed has all the ability to prove me wrong, but I'm gonna say that they're not a top 12 football team.
Special teams. I don't worry about the mental psyche of a linebacker if he misses a tackle. I think you just line up again and go get it. I worry a little bit mentally about a long snapper, about a holder, and about a kicker who have botched 3 in a row. I mean, how do you feel about that moving forward?
It's definitely a concern, but it's not like Ramos hasn't been slow and steady throughout his career. I mean, this is his 3rd year being the kicker. You kind of know what you've got with Ramos. He's missed kicks before. I think that's more of a one-time flash in the pan. I have confidence in Bob Diaco is going to react, man. I mean, he is a nut. If you ever watch him on the practice field, trust me, he came into practice that Monday with a plan. This is never going to happen again. So I think it's just a once in a season type collapse for that unit. Hopefully, it's not like, okay, when you muff a punt, you start to notice, oh, we have a problem. We don't have a returner, and none of these guys have returned kicks on the collegiate level before. You're not seeing that. Xavier Thomas is doing a just fine job back there. You're talking about a kicker, holder, and long snapper who've been doing it for years, and we have a long body of work of them doing it correctly. It looks like it's all unraveled all at once for this football team. So I have to think that that's not something we're going to see based on history.
Just an avalanche of bad stuff that went on in the second half of that football game against Texas A&M. Speaking of the Aggies, how you like the game in Columbia, South Carolina this weekend? Texas A&M at South Carolina. You've seen them both now.
Yeah, South Carolina is a tough, gritty team, but they're also a team that's very flawed in a lot of ways, and that's certainly a tough place to play. I am going to go with Texas A&M, but Hunt, it's one of those games, like, it's really not going to surprise me whichever way it goes. I know Lenore Sellers has his limitations as a passer, but Marshall Reed is also, a mostly unknown quantity how good he's going to be moving forward. We saw him start a few games, but he wasn't playing the way he played against LSU in those games, and he only threw 2 passes in the second half against LSU. So I think Texas A&M has the more talented roster, and I'm going to go with them. But, look, not shocked. I think it'll be a close game.
We'll see. Point spread is 3. Texas A&M is favored in Williams-Brice Stadium. All right, Preston, we appreciate some time. Have a great weekend. We'll talk next week with LSU and Bama around the corner.
See you then, Hunt. Enjoy the bye week.
Sure will. He's Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. You can find him at TigerBait. You can also find him on their YouTube channel each and every Monday.
Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.